So I'm very happy to actually share with you some of the important results, what we intend to actually do in our laboratory. So so my topic for the day is that I'll be talking of advanced characterization of materials. So I'll just using PED and ACOM. So as my talk will be very much easy because Partha has introduced the different terminologies and how we can actually use the machine and what techniques. But for the sake of clarity, I just just a few slides to say that how do we start going into the actual application and how do you actually use them. So I'll go that how basically technically how do we use them. I don't know, these things are going off. So I must thank that all these results what I'm going to share today with you is not only pure my research, it is also collaborative research with Dr. Rajdeep, Bajinder, Jafir, Chandan and Palika Saha and Deepak Das. So with the samples which basically are collected for them, and we have done the advanced characterization. So basically, as you know, the DMR has over the years developed a very high degree of expertise in R&D of several high performance structural materials for high temperature applications. So I'll be sharing the examples of these live examples of how to face the problem and how this particular technique or advanced techniques of electron diffraction can be used to solve those problems. So basically, as you know, the microstructurally and analytical characterizations are very critical to understand, and their relationships is very important to establish. So these advanced techniques have several new characterization techniques. This is one of them. This is also can be called as an in situ technique because everything in life we do inside the microscope. And this is also very important to emphasize that as you know that all these nanomaterials and the nanotechnology need to be characterized or need to be seen by our eyes using different techniques. So this one of the methods that nanomaterials can be also characterized and to the extent up to various nanometers using this technique. So basically, I will be talking of the advanced technique, how we use the focused ion beam, that is called dual beam, how we use electron backscatter diffraction, which is in ACM, and how this has accumulated that this using EBSD, which is a common technique. Nowadays, people are not able to get the details. So next step in the ladder of this advanced characterization is orientation mapping using TEM. So I'll be taking 3 examples. That is, one is platinum aluminum coating, which is applied to the engine components, and how to solve a problem out of these coatings. And then we have to find out that how this chromium displays in nickel-based alloy is actually how is identified. That which is there's a problem. This is an after effect, that is an engine component. Which is basically as identified, and we need to find out what is the problem. Then the third example I will take of a gamma titanium aluminum alloy. This advanced alloy, how to find out the phases and how to use both the techniques, that is PED and ACOM combinedly, to find out the new generation alloy, what are the phases present. So these 3 examples help. So before we go to the actual examples, we'll say how we use this dual beam system. As you know from the name itself, the 2 beam system, that is, one is electron beam and there is an ion beam. So these 2 beams basically, what happens, one is from the electron beam from the top and the ion beam from the side. They both together in one machine is being used to find out what is the area we need to observe. So this is very useful because what happens, this electron beam, we switch it off and use the ion beam as a knife. So as we do in our kitchen, we use the knife to cut the vegetables or the fruits. Similar thing we do for the materials. So we use the ion beam and we put off the electron beam and use the ion beam to cut the material and to remove the material to bring it a shape. So these will be required while I discuss the examples. So this particular machine, the techniques will be used in subsequent to come to an example of the results. So this is a machine forward. We can do a number of things. Like we can do a deposition also. We can do a deposition of platinum to tungsten. We can do a deposition. It can act as a manipulator. We can do also put off the ion beam, and we can use the electron beam. And by putting off the ion beam, we can use the electron beam to image after that the same machine. That's why it's called dual beam equipment. Next come what we can do in the machine. We can do a sample preparation for TEM. We can do 3D microscopy of the samples. That means we can look at the example here. We see this is the IC chip. We can cut it off and you can see how many layers are there in between. From three-dimensionally, these are the powder particles. You can look at them. Each powder particles which we basically use to make materials, consolidated materials. Similarly, we can also find out what is there in each one of them. What is there inside? So you can cut open powder particles which we apply even on our face. This each we can open and start seeing the structure inside. We can do a manipulation using a tip. And various other examples can be used to find out. So basically, what you can do in the next stage is an EBSD, what we regularly do. That is, in an electron beam, electron basket diffraction, in the ACM chamber, there is electron beam, and what we do, we tilt our sample to 70 degree to generate Kikuchi pattern. There will be a pattern generated. That pattern is analyzed through a detector called EBSD detector, and this detector gives us this sort of information, that is crystal orientation, misorientation, grain size, local texture, recrystallized fractions, substructure, stains, gain boundary, phase identification, phase distribution. This sort of information we can get from EBSD. But the one which is not mentioned is that in ACM, whatever you see, there is a parameter variation. Is a limitation of size. If it is very, very small sizes which you cannot detect using an ACM, then this is not possible to detect in this machine. Next come that what do we get basically? Basically, you can look at that in EBSD. What we get a map like this. We can get an orientation map. You see, this is the titanium example of a titanium alloy. See how fine distribution, but still you can get the beta phase. You can look at this particular thing, that how alpha and beta are distributed. So phase distribution is possible to look at this sort of thing, and then we can find out the phase map. Grain map, this is the grain orientation. So like that you can find out. This is another example of a titanium alloy. This is a new alloy. See, look at this structure. This is a band structure, shows either how the microstructure, then in this microstructure how the phases are distributed. These fine phases, what you see in blue and red, they are distributed. That is the two different phases. That is, one as gamma, has got a different structure, and TICL. So this I will slowly come to that. If these phases are very, very fine, you will not be able to detect in EBSD. You require something else, and there comes the nanomegas instruments come into picture. You can find out also the gain orientation map. In this orientation, you can see the gain orientation map. You can do a IPA, that is IPF, that is inverse pole figure. You can find out the TI3. This is for gamma phase. This is for TI3L. You can find out the pole phase, and you can find out the texture, the local texture, the average texture. All those things you can find out in the machine. Then comes that where this machine fails, that is particularly when ACM has got a particular magnification, very fine objects, we cannot look into it. There comes, we have to go for the TEM. In the TEM, we may have to attach, in this region, we have to attach a camera here where we can capture the diffraction happening on the screen. That is, as you know, in the TEM, if all of you are familiar, maybe there's a top, there's a source, and we put our center in the center region. We can put our sample, the sample area. There are two different apertures, objective and objective different aperture. Here we get a fluorescent skin, and in the fluorescent skin, whatever is being observed diffraction, that we capture using the camera, which is supplied by nanomegas. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, right. So this particular is a hardware which is to be attached on the face of the binocular, and this is a controller, and also we have a software. So these three parts, one is camera, controller, and the software, completely is supplied by nanomegas, and they have patented that, they have designed this, they have made this software and the hardware together to give you a very detailed structure in the TEM, the first time in the world. This is what is called that orientation mapping, and this is done by precision electron diffraction. So basically, you can see, look at this example taken from them only. Look at, suppose you want to look at this particular area. So what do? In ACM, we get an orientation image of like this, an orientation mapping. If you want to look at this particular area, you can see that this area, we're not able to see much details. But if you make it a much resolution, that means TM, if you take this area and do a precision electron mapping using nanomegas, you can see so many other different colors have come, that is each one of them having different orientation. That means if you increase the resolution, like I will give an example, like, so suppose you take a lens in your hand lens, and you draw two different dots under the lens using a pen, and if you remove the lens, what you see is one dot. That means the two dots is merged if you don't have a lens. If you again put the lens, you can see there are two different distinct dots you have put in on a paper. That means if you increase the resolution, if you increase the zoom, if you zoom it with the lens, you can see the more details. Otherwise, you will end up saying that it is one dot, but actually it's two dots. Similarly, the details what is captured in ACM cannot resolve the more and more important structures what is there inside, which is possible to using the PED. So ACOM, orientation mapping. So how it is done, I think the Partha has explained to it, but just to complete it, basically it is done almost like an ABSD, but slightly different way. Each dot we wait there and take a pattern like this. This is called electron diffraction pattern. I think those who do TEM, they know that. This is everything in TEM. We move to the next dot, we take a pattern. When you move to the next dot, you take a pattern. Like that, you keep collecting patterns, and online you keep matching this pattern, whatever you get here. There is a database. So this pattern matching takes place online. That's why it's a time consuming. Each experiment takes 3 to 4 hours or even more. Average 3 to 4 hours. So this pattern is matched and then given a color, and this we get in the TEM. So this is called diffraction, and this is what Partha has explained. This is how it is done, how the software takes place of it, how it is automatically mapped. These are all actually taken care of. So basically, if you see that how it is, what is the main thing is that you have to put a structure value. That means you can put the A, B, C of the parameters and alpha, beta, gamma, what is the structures, and the structure factors are taken care of into it, and which is then mapped subsequently. This is all actually Partha has explained, and this is what is called the precision electron diffraction, which basically you can see that if we rock, basically the rocking of electron beams on the top, which is done by the decoiling, that is, then you can see that what we actually expose, instead of simple diffraction pattern like this, we excite so many other planes to get a pattern like this. This is called precision electron diffraction. This will be using, you can see, look at it. Initially, if you have no precision, you have a pattern like this, because these are very important. In my experiments, I'll show you how they're important. Once we once we do a precision, that means we rock the beam in the top region along the beam, and then we actually excite so many planes, crystal planes, we get a pattern like this. This gives us much more orientation informations and crystal orientation, which is if you required in my example. So basically you can look at how these things keep on coming. So I'll come to the examples. Basically this particular technique can also give us same as EBSD. We can do the grain size, stain mapping, micro. This is how you basically try to extract information from doing the experiment. It can be done on metals, ceramics, nanomaterials, polymer, nanomer, semiconducting, and so many other things. So I will come to the examples, 3 examples. This is one of the examples which I'm going to talk about you. This is a live example of an engine, aero engine, which is having a brittle, which is very difficult to characterize because they are very brittle sample, which is nickel, chromium, tungsten manifold. It says in this manifold, what happened? There is a failure. So this failed manifold, we have to find out how it has failed. Only then we can find out how an actual component in the engine will not fail tomorrow. So this failed component, we do investigation first routinely by an ACM. So take a sample from here, take a sample from here, take a sample from here, and we do routine investigation. Some of the investigations we are not able to conclude, so we see a variation, we see a fatigue striations we see. So this region we need to be investigated. We find out that these cracks appear. You can see the crack starts appearing. So basically we wanted to happen that that this particular area we actually have to be taken it out. So what happened? We slowly magnify, go to an FESEM, then we identify a region. Then what we do? That we do an ADS just to find out that what is the reach phase, which is that we initially find it out, because as I told you, we need to put parameters to do an precision electron diffraction. So we find out using an ADS that what is this area which is coming out, which is tungsten reach and chromium reach. We find it out. This contrast is chromium reach, this is tungsten reach. This is how to do investigations. And then what we use, as I told you, we use precision electron focused ion beam. As I told you, we use electron beam now, ion beam to cut the samples. So what we have done here, we have done a platinum deposit here, and we have made a trench out of these two. So you can see that in this region, this is a region of interest. So we have taken this region is left out. We have removed this region. We remove this region using focused ion beam in ion beam condition. Then you can see this in this particular example that this region is removed off, this is removed off, and we are hanging out willingly with this region. So this region is taken out and put in TEM. So you can see this is an omni probe. It's like a forceps or like a fingertip. You hold the sample, you actually join it and take out the sample and put in a TEM holder. This is taken out and put in a TEM holder, and you detach this again after this. So you can see this portion is detached. So sample is now on the TEM holder, TEM grid, and you put inside the TEM. What do we get? We start getting image like this in the TEM. So you start magnifying and start doing experiments. So this is the holder in the TEM's particularly single tilt holder. You can look at it. This is the manifold. So this we basically to start doing automated diffraction tomography for this sample now. We can find out that, so we have done the analysis that it is a chromium phase which is responsible for failure. So now slowly we are trying to converge that which is responsible for the, what is this? We have to identify what is this carbide formation. This is some carbide. So this is a metal carbide. So we start investigating using the electron beam, that automated diffraction tomography. We started using and having the tilt and started capturing so many images of, as you know, that as I told you that if you rotate, you'll get all images, and slowly we convert we feed this in the information in the software, and we also feed the what are the parameters required, what is the crystal structure, what can be the crystal structure. This is a hit and trial method, but slowly we come to convert the diffraction pattern tilt axis have been identified, and then we get a pattern like this. You are able to see that this pattern which is coming up, which is to visualize that how the different patterns are coming. which is the exact zone axis. So we basically captured them and put them in the software to get the structure solution. So finding a solution in the unit cell, we find out that this is the structure. So basically what we do, we first put a threshold, we set a maximum minimum volume values, and then we run the cluster routines and find out that this cluster, identify the cluster and visualize them. So this diffraction, this is the software part of it. We start rotating to find out the matches, and what we get, we successfully prepare the TM lamellae from extremely brittle sample. Then we identify the phases, then identify the tungsten rich precipitates is responsible, that is slowly converging, that is M6Q. Then studied on the origin of this failure, which is because they are revealed by a very small phase, that is chromium rich phases. See, we are slowly converging this chromium rich phases. Then we find out that this chromium rich phases is having what observation? This chromium rich carbide phases. So then we find out from the crystal structure analysis. I'm not going to the details, then I require full 1 hour to do that. How do I done the analysis? This is M23C6. So this sort of conclusion can be drawn using this sort of technique. I'll come to the second case study, which is an oxidation resistance diffusion studies of a platinum aluminum coating. This is also another component, engine component, where you have to coat. I think you all know that engines, whatever engines we make, say suppose nickel-based alloys or titanium-based alloys, cannot be used directly for aerospace application. They need to be coated for various high temperature applications. Because why it is required? I'll just maybe suppose some of you may be material scientists, because we operate these engines almost to the melting point. Suppose you're using nickel, so you use almost to the melting point, you use them, so we require to coat them so that it doesn't start melting. So we require high temperature coating. This high temperature coating, maybe it is important to have in all the aero engines. You can this is the aero engine, and this is thermal barrier coating basically. So basically, if you look at it, what are the various coatings we apply? We basically apply, and this is the super nickel super. We have a bond coat, and then we have a ceramic layer coat, we have a, and then the actual hot. So hot air, what happens, the temperature of the hot air is stopped by yttrium stabilized zirconia ceramic coating. You can see the temperature drop, and then there is a bond coat, which is a platinum aluminum, which is my interest area. I will show you how this can be studied. Then actually the metal thing is there. So there is a substantial temperature drop out of this coating, which the actual blade is seeing. If you look at it, that how to see them, this is the blade, this is the different layers. So this is the fracture end. So this fracture, we have to understand how these fractures are actually propagating, these micro cracks are happening. So what is happening? See, this is an SEM picture. This is the platinum aluminum coating. Then we have an outer layer. This is a cross-section studies. So you can see from the top. This is a nickel platinum aluminum coating. Then this slowly diffuse, and then multi-layer structure. You now look at this same thing in the EBSD. You have various types of grain structure, elongated, multi-grain, all this, and actually it is coming to metal here. Now, to find out that how the cracks are happening, these are micro cracks. So we can look at these cracks now. What is happening? We're not able to observe only in SEM. So started after full thorough investigation in a SEM and the EBSD, we are not satisfied, so we went for a particular region of analysis. You can look at them, that we can find out using EBSD how it is possible. 1 minute, I'll take some water. 1 minute. Yes, sorry. So basically, yes. So where's my yeah. So after this, what with this platinum, this coating, so we can understand this particular platinum aluminum bond coat, we need to extract them. That is, we have to find out from this region. This is all EBSD. Slowly we are converging, we are going towards an TEM investigation. If you look at them sizes, they are very fine sizes, which EBSD can do this part but not this part of it. So basically we have started going same techniques. You use FIV to actually take out samples from here, and then we have started doing the analysis in the TEM and with the PED, and you can find out the mapping. That is, this is the tungsten map, this is nickel, these maps, so you can find it out. So basically in this we can find out that there is a dynamic recrystallization and gain rotation at very high temperature. This sort of thing is not possible to find out using other techniques. So this particular case study, has told us that there is a very fine recrystallization taking place inside the grain, which is not possible to see in other techniques. I will go to the third one. That is that titanium alloy. This is an advanced titanium alloy, which is basically gamma titanium alloy, which is just going to be used in commercial flights very soon, but it is already been tested by GE. So basically in this we'll be talking that there are so many phases. That is, you can look at that there's a TIL phase, which is a different structure. This TI3L, which is next ordered hexagonal structure. TIB is there. There's a beta phase. There's a tetragonal phase. There's a gamma phase. So all this is a multi-phase structure, because what happened, if you want to look at the aerospace industry, all nickel-based alloys components are going to be replaced by titanium, because there is a revolution going on to replace the nickel based alloy with the titanium alloy. So this particular titanium alloy, which is TIAL, which is more of aluminum, 50-50 around that, this thing is very important, and we are in the cutting edge of research to use this as a component for the next generation aerospace engine. What will happen? The contribution of this aerospace engine will be your flight time will reduce half the time, because engine weight will reduce half of it. That means if you are able to make an engine with titanium, or if you fly from, say, suppose from UK to Washington in 8 hours, you can fly in 4 hours. This sort of applications we are aiming for all these aerospace engine. I don't go into the details, as you know that the various titanium alloys are there, and basically if you look at, as of now, we are only thinking of using super alloy, and we are going for TIL base, which is 3 point, which is half the density. That means half the weight will be saved. So let us look at the structure, because we are more interested in understanding the structure and giving a solution. So this is the regular structure, which is basically equiax structure having different grain structure, and this we find out what are the distribution using a regular EDS and EPMA basically, and the compositions and the phases we identify them by X-ray. As you know, that X-ray can give us bulk characterization, and the phase map we do it. Slowly we are going that this sort of information is not possible, because once you find out the creep value, you will not able to understand why this is happening. So the creep value, which is very important for aero component, cannot be understood by doing a simple EBSD and NEDS structures. So to understand the creep value, which is very important, I think you know that creep is a time dependent deformation. That means if you keep on using it, what will happen with time is very important for the aero component. This particular creep this thing we studied to try to understand that, see, these phases, very fine phases start appearing, which are not possible to do it in ACM. So we have jumped to do it in the TM. We find out the phase mapping in first ACM, then the TM level. Then we find out that there are the different phases are coming up, which are very fine. So these phases, apart from TITL, the other new phases are coming up. So these new phases, if you look at the structure, and very fine phases, you can look at this. So these phases are identified. This is a phase map. This is the tau phase are coming out, which is different composition. So this sort of things were never reported. So we have published these papers. You can actually refer our papers. So what we are doing, we are characterizing first with EBSD, and what is not possible in EBSD, you jump to TEM. You first make the samples, you go to TM and start observing this fine thing. So any fine or nano or advanced or small phases which are not capable of identifying and characterizing using normal techniques, we start using in the TEM. So basically, this is another one. So we can look at it that this sort of thing, the small ones, this we take diffraction and then we actually map them. So this mapping, this is the combination of the phase map, the PED and the orientation map. So PED and orientation map coming together to give you a structure solution. So these two together, I think you know, the one is precision electron diffraction, where you do a rocking sort of thing, beam rocking sort of thing, and the other one, as you told you come to one point, take a pattern, move to the next point, take a pattern. These two methods are combined, and this PED resolves that. These small lattice sizes, what are those? What are the symmetries? What are how the strain mapping has been done? This thing is not possible earlier. Nobody has find out. So these results were actually published last year. You can actually refer our papers. You can see the distributions also. And now, because once you want to identify very fine phase, you can look at the distribution. So these distributions are earlier it was not reported, and we are able to find out that why this gamma phase, how this titanium 45-8 niobium alloy, how these phases are actually distributed, what is the orientation, or how, because if it fails, how it fails. It depends upon all these things. These small things matters for any big thing. Any small thing actually is much responsible for any big thing. Like I'll give you one example. In steel, I think you know that there are various types of steel. What matters in this big steel, suppose a rod or ball bars or even the plane or the ships, okay, all ships are made of steel. Matters is small amount of carbon, which is less than 1%. So carbon is less than 1% total. It plays a very important role. Similarly, in all this material, very small things matters, and these small things are characterized using various types of techniques. This is one is ACOM and the PED. So this combined, these two, we are able to find the structures, even the stresses, the distribution, the phases. These all have been characterized thoroughly using this particular technique and these machines. So we are using this. Look at this particular three-phase structures, this very strained region. So we at various temperatures, these thorough studies. I'm not going to the details of all these studies, because I'm just going to give you an application part of it. Otherwise, this itself can be a lecture. So we are able to find out that only how the grain orientation is taking place. What are the grain orientation? This you look at the structures. Okay, so this sort of things you can find out these orientation relationships of the two phases. These are all found out using different. So some of them is using ABSD, and then the next step is using ACOM and PED together. So this we can find out that how the titanium boride is how they are distributed, which is not, they are very small quantities, very small phases. How the tau phases are found out, how the precipitates who are near the labs, and how they are distributed in the TI3L gain boundaries. These discussions actually are required to make the material usable. So I'm not going to talk much, because as I told you, I just planned for 40 minutes. I like to thank Dr. Kamath, who is our Director General, who encourages me to do various type of advanced research, and Dr. G. Mosun Reddy, who is the Director now. He encourages me for all the advanced techniques to run and to work in this laboratory. I thank them for this thing, and I'm from DML. This is my office. Thank you very much.